Here we go. All right, welcome to the RPA Ohala list training. We are blessed to have Rabbi Marcia Plum, who is the co-founder of Soul Balance Mussar, and she's also the director of Jewish Life and Partnerships at the Rashi School in Dedham, Massachusetts. So take it away, Rabbi Marcia.
So it's really nice to see y'all, and I really appreciate the connection with y'all, and also especially to Lisa. She and I reconnected at a birthday party of a good friend, and then we were
A
talking and
wedding, actually.
a wedding. Oh yeah, you're right. It was a wedding, not a birthday party, all the more so. And so it's really, really nice to reconnect with her and to reconnect with Marcia as well. It's really nice to see you and to meet Jeff and Chaya in person as well. Where are y'all, Jeff and Chaya?
I'm in Miami.
Miami.
And
Jeff,
I'm in Baltimore.
Right, right. And Marcia, where are you right now?
I'm still in Wayland, haven't
Right.
moved.
Great, great. And I'm in Needham, outside of Boston. So I am going to screen share, which hopefully I can do. Am I still co-host?
Yes, you were co-host, yes.
Happened to it. So that we can see what we're going to do. Hold on a minute. Just a second. Just gonna make this smaller. Okay. You'd think that we would do this quicker after 5 years of this. Okay. Okay, so can you all see that?
Yes,
Okay, great. So this is beginning, and just to, this soul imbalance is Mussar Center here, located here in Boston in New England, but it's mainly online. It started in person, but it's now mainly online. And you'll see the Instagram and email if you want to be in touch at some point, and hopefully you will, and I'll tell you more about that later. So this is the plan for our time. So I want to give you an introduction of a little bit about who I am, and also a little bit about where this work around using Mussar for managing hard conversations came from. Then we're going to look at the midot that I use and the guidelines for managing those conversations, but we're not going to get into that a lot. And then we're going to focus on chesed texts and further discussion, and then what's on offer, which is just basically what does the soul and balance offer, and what are we doing, and things like that. So I'm going to stop screen sharing for a minute. So we are, as you know, I feel anyway, a sacred time, not only because of the Omer, but also I think that the weekend, and I think of Easter as a powerful day, a powerful spiritual energy around Easter. I realize Easter's not yet, but I studied at a Catholic seminary for 3 years and did a lot of work in different Protestant seminaries over the years, over the decades. And I came to greatly appreciate modern understandings of Easter, of a time of a spiritual focus, spiritual energy in the world around rebirth and renewal of hope that can be present for all of us, regardless of whether we believe in the story or the origin story of Easter or not. It's not relevant, regardless of whether we remember the not ancient, but persecutions that happened on this weekend against us. That's present as well. So there's some bitterness around this weekend, but also it's a powerful time of hope And I feel like we need as much hope as we can get at the moment. And I'm a believer in drawing on the hope and prayers of all those of goodwill. The fact that we are on the day of Malchut Shebechesed is another piece of that as well. The idea of how can we be our most majestic selves, which is how I interpret Malchut. How can we rise to be what our potential is and what God wants of us? We do it through chesed today. So what is chesed? And that's what we're going to kind of move into. So one ground rule before we get into that is that I am, those of you who know me, I'm very interactive. So, and very relaxed. So feel free to interrupt me, to stop, to say, wait a minute, to say, I completely disagree with that, or here's another take on it, or what are you talking about? So any of those or none of them are very welcome. So feel free at any point. So let's go to, we're going to focus on chesed today. But this conversation that Lisa and I had that reconnected us was focusing on what I'm calling Mussar for hard conversations, because not this last Martin Luther King Day, but a year ago, Martin Luther King Day, I'm the director of Jewish Life and Partnerships at the Rashi School, which is a day school in Greater Boston, pre-K to eighth grade. And we took a bunch of families, 60 families, to a Martin Luther King volunteer day in Cambridge. Multi-faith, multicultural, packed out. And the two people who introduced the day, who welcomed everybody, it was going to be a day of good works and, all that kind of stuff, volunteering and stuff like that. And the two people who introduced it chose to use that opportunity to blast Israel and to, in effect, say that anyone who had any support for Israel could not be part of the global community and the global conversation around justice. So it was a very disturbing experience. And most of the families left. Most of the Jewish families walked out. And some of the children who were there, there were a lot of kids, a lot of the kids from the day school, right? It was, were really afraid. And the parents were afraid. And so afterwards, I debriefed with the parents, etc. And I spoke with the two speakers at great length. Then we had a meeting with the parents, and they really wanted to bash these two guys. One of them was a professor at Emerson, which is a liberal arts and graduate school here that focuses on film, music, theater, and communications. So he's a communication professor there. And the other is a Harvard student, undergrad. So the parents were naturally and understandably very angry and wanted to publish this widely and, which I understand, wanted to come down very, very hard on these two guys and the organizers of the event and Cambridge and all of it, which I completely understood.
Can I ask you a question?
Yeah,
Were they
Lisa.
were they ministers, and what faith were they?
Those two guys? No.
They weren't ministers.
Not ministers. One was a professor of communication, and one, as I said, was a Harvard student. Neither were ministers. The minister who welcomed everybody to his church that day was just, hello, nice to have you, big, jolly, great to see everybody.
And then they took over and
And then they handed it over to the
needed to understand.
Speakers, right?
Got it?
Okay.
Okay.
Okay. So I said to the parents, let's try a different way. Let's see if we can be countercultural about how we interact with people who we radically disagree with. Because, of course, like y'all, I'm sure, and certainly in Boston, with the explosion at Harvard and MIT and Emerson and all the universities, and for y'all as well, the protests were loud and strong, and as we all know, what was going on at that time. So this was January 2024. Okay. Yeah. So I said, let's see if we can be countercultural. Let's see if we can create a relationship with these two guys. Let's see if we can use Mussar to do something other than bash each other or shout at each other from across the street or whatever it may be, right? So a small group of parents and the two speakers and the organizers of the day, and we got a little group together. And I created a set of guidelines with others and sent them around, and we talked about them and created a set of Mussar guidelines and a Mussar framework for it. And long story short, the dialogue is still going on. So I've continued to meet with them throughout the year, and actually we're going to meet again in just a couple of weeks. And it has become a powerful conversation that wouldn't have happened if we hadn't said, let's try and do it differently. Let's try and see the godliness in each other. Let's try and see the humanity in each other underneath the opinions and underneath the in some ways, scary, the fact that we disagreed so radically about the nature of being Jewish, the nature of being of Israel, all of that we all know about. And the fact that that was very threatening emotionally to the Jews, to them, to all of us, right? We know that. I said, let's try and do it differently. So what I want to share with you is the very briefly, the Mussar Midot that I chose to use as our basis. And I'll just very briefly show you the guidelines. We're not going to go through all the guidelines, but I'm happy to send them to you. And I have them on links. So I'm happy to send them to you if you'd like. But and if you'd like, I can certainly come back and we can go through those guidelines and talk about what the structure was for doing those dialogues. And it was very structured, very, very focused, and very Mussar based. And I'm happy to another time talk that through with you and teach you how we did it and etc. For right now, I'm just going to throw it, do a kind of brief sharing of it because we're going to focus on Chesed, one of the Midot that we chose. Okay, I'll pause there. Thoughts, questions, anything at the moment before we go into that? Okay. I just want to clarify as well, one of the goals of having dialogue together was one of my agendas, and I was upfront with them about it, that I wanted them to see nuance. I didn't go in to change their minds because I knew it wouldn't. And the student became eventually one of the leaders of the Harvard encampment. So was very, very active. And the Emerson professor became active in the protests on his campus as well. But our dialogues continued throughout. And they have understood the nuance and they haven't necessarily changed their views on Israel and Gaza. I didn't expect they would. But they have come to understand a completely different way of looking at it than they did before we had the conversations. And I've learned a lot as well from them. Okay. So let me go back to where we are. And I've just lost it. No, hold on a minute, sorry. Just lost all of our text. Yeah, okay, hold on. Okay. So let me screen share for another minute. Okay, so I've told you, we've done the introduction, told you the origin story, right? Now we're going to look at, can you see that well enough? Okay, and I realize my screen is a mess, but there we go, that's okay. It works for me. Okay, the Midot. So the fundamental text that was the guiding text for all of the dialogue was this one. Imenani limili ukshani la'atzmi ma'ani ve'im lo achshav ematai. So if I am not for myself, meaning each of us present had the right and the ability and the encouragement to speak from our own truth, to say what we believed in. And however, and at the same time, if I only focus on my own belief, my own perspective, my own little world, then what am I? I'm not truly a participant in this world, is what the view was. And if we don't try and do it differently now, if we don't see that the other has a different view that is worth hearing and that the conversation is worth having, then when? And certainly in our time, if we didn't do it then, when were we going to do it? Right? If we don't do something that's iconoclastic, when are we going to do it? Okay. The Midot that we chose. By the way, I just realized I am making a very big assumption, which is that you know about Mussar. So, and that you know what Midot are. I just realized that I kind of leapt into that assumption. So if you don't, feel free to stop me and say, you know, what are you talking about? Okay. Otherwise, I'm just going to keep going with that assumption. Okay. So the midot that I chose were B'Tselem Elohim, that every person is a child of God, Kavod, Chesed, so Kavod, respect, Chesed, Sakranut, curiosity, Shtika, how we communicate, Savlanut, patience, Anava, the awareness that we have something to contribute and we don't have all the answers, and Hitlamdut, self-reflection, self-awareness. Okay. I'll come, the Omer posters is just that for every week of the Omer, I have a poster that we put up in our house that I brought a copy of the Chesed poster that I can show you if you're interested, but that's a little bit separate. Oops, okay, I'm going to stop screen sharing because I want to share with you now the guidelines.
We're still on screen
Yeah.
sharing.
Hopefully, can you now
Okay.
see Mussar Midot?
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
good. Okay, so I'll make this bigger. I'm just going to briefly, as I say, briefly show you how we did this. On the left are the guidelines that everybody had to follow as part of the dialogue. And on the right are the midot that connected to those guidelines. So you can see that, again, I can send you this, but these were the basic guidelines that everybody had to agree with. And that when we were there, everybody could add on to if they wanted. But these were the guidelines. Everyone here is B'Tselem Elohim, made in God's image and is a child of God. We will keep that in mind at all times. We will treat each other with respect. We will care about how the others feel and think. We will show curiosity before judgment. We will open ourselves to learning something new. We will listen with attention and pause before speaking. We will wait until another has finished speaking before speaking ourselves. We will regard ourselves with humility, knowing that we don't have all the knowledge or answers. And then part of it was, you know, that Yehuda Amichai poem, where one is right, no flowers grow. I don't know if you know that. It's a fantastic poem, but that was kind of the basis of this. We will remember that we all bring our own frames, our own identities and experiences that shape how we see the world. We will speak with honesty and respect. So we will show kavod to each other, but also to ourselves. We will speak as individuals and use the I voice. We're not representing any country or people. We will avoid using generalizations about whole groups of people. When we feel uncomfortable because of something someone else says, we will reflect on guidelines 1 and 2 before speaking. And those were, just to remind you, that we are all God's children and we will treat each other with respect. And finally, we will not repeat what others say from this gathering. Okay, so those were general guidelines just to show you how the midot were translated into behavioral guidelines, as it were. Okay, I'm going to stop screen sharing. Okay, pause there. Thoughts, questions, anything about any of that so far? Anything? Yeah, Lisa.
Well, so you've got all the guidelines in, then how did you direct the dialogue? I mean, who started? Are you going to give us what really
I'm
happened?
happy to
I'm
do. I didn't
interested.
bring that. I didn't bring the structure for how we did the first dialogue or the second or the third or the fourth or the fifth. But I'm happy to go through that with you and share that with you.
Well,
yeah.
I'm just curious what happened. Were the people who attended able to follow these rubrics, and what was the outcome in that first session? That's what I'm asking.
Yeah, right. So I set up the first question, and y'all will relate to this, I'm sure, in a very intentional way. I made sure that we met in a neutral place, and I put the tables, I put us on a round table, and I brought pastries and flowers and, trying to make it as comfortable as possible. I had sent the guidelines and the structure to everybody participating beforehand. And when we got there, introduced each other, whatever, and we went through the guidelines one by one, reading them aloud. And before the session, people had given me other suggestions of guidelines that I'd included. And then I invited people to add any other guidelines that they wanted. And we did have a few, like, for example, an extension of the last one. If we were going to post anything about this or share it with our constituents or spread it, write about it, whatever, we were going to seek each other's permission about what we said and before we said it, about what we were going to say and beforehand. So that was kind of, we did an extension of that. And we also talked about what would be the next step. So that was another thing. And then the structure was also, I had sent this out beforehand. The structure was everybody went around and for 3 minutes introduced themselves, said something about themselves. The second question for 3 minutes each was what brought them to the MLK Day that day? Why did whoever showed up, why did they come? What was their, and the next question for 3 minutes was, what did people experience on the day? Just for 3 minutes each. The next was, what did you take away from the experience? Again, that one was, I think, 2 minutes each. So it was very, very rigid. And I kept time. I mean, I really, really kept time. The timer went off and people had to stop, right? And then I opened it up. So then I said, now you can go back to one of those, you can share, you can say more about it. So then it was an open conversation, an open dialogue, and parents shared more about what they felt on the day and what it felt like for them. And the guys talked about what the two speakers talked about what they experienced on the day and their reflections afterwards. And I'd had very long conversations with both of them beforehand. The organizers, everybody, it was free flowing then. And what was supposed to be an hour, I'd really been very strict about that as well, that we were all going to meet for an hour and that was it. It actually, after like 50 minutes, we were kind of, we were kind of in the middle of the free flow. So I just said to everybody, we have 10 more minutes. What would you like to do from this point? And the group agreed that we ended up talking for 2.5 hours together. And the group felt very enthusiastic about continuing. And what ended up happening, again, long story short, I ended up meeting with the two guys now since then. And one of them, the professor, always brought the guidelines with him that I'd handed out, which was interesting. And before we met every single time, I would start by saying, when we sat down together, before we started talking, I would always say, remember, we are children of God. That's who we are. Everything we say is based on that. And carried on from there. And I didn't continue the structure. That 3 minute, 3 minute, 3 minute, 2 minute thing. It became purely free flowing on different topics about different things that we each cared about that were going on. Although we did do check-in with each other each time. We did take a few minutes and just say, how are you? What's happening in your world? Not our worlds personally, but our worlds in terms of the passion that we felt about either anti-Semitism or Israel or protests, kind of where we each were at that moment located in the trauma of it all. Yeah, Lisa.
Have things shifted since the Trump administration took over and all the stuff's going on campus and people are not able to do these have things shifted? You met with them. I was just curious if things have shifted for them. How are they continuing their protesting, given the current administration and everything? Seems like things have changed quite a bit. I'm not sure though.
Y'all may have a different perception of this than I do. Based on my experience with these different universities here in Boston, things have gone, things have become much more focused. There's not the public protests against Gaza anymore. And again, your experience may be different, but what I've seen is a lot more targeted anti-Semitism, actually focused on Jews. And it's shifted from Israel to full-on anti-Semitism, even though a lot of it was anti-Semitic beforehand. That's my view anyway. Not that all criticism of Israel is anti-Semitic. I don't believe that. But I do believe that some of the protests certainly rolled into that. But, and these two guys, both shifted their views. They both understood the nuance and they both understood the personal nature of their protests on other human beings, including me. And they came to understand that there were different sides to the story. Would I say that they've given up their protests against Israel in general, their view on that? I'd say no, probably not. Would I say that they understand how those protests felt in some ways, how it felt threatening to me as a person? Yes, they do understand that. And one of them said that even when the protests in his university were still going on, Emerson, he said he doesn't participate in them anymore, which was very interesting. The Harvard student went to work for Ayanna Pressley as an intern. What does that say? I don't know where that puts him. Far left representative.
I don't know who that person is.
Yeah, that's what I was just saying. She's far left representative in Massachusetts, and that's who he chose to intern with, which is very good for him, and maybe not so good for anti-Semitism or Israel. But it's interesting that that's where he chose to intern. So anyway, so I think he's less changeable. On the other hand, he definitely understood nuance and still continues to understand nuance. Chaya, yeah.
Have they, the effect of this conversation, have they gone to their communities and had any effect? Has it rippled out into their world, even if for a little bit?
It's interesting. It's something that I'm going to bring up with one of them, because I know that on the Emerson campus, I'm saying this, maybe I realize this is recording. I know there's still issues in both campuses. And one of my questions to them is, how involved are they, or aware are they in those issues that are still going on? Not really about Israel, but a broader issue. Where are they on that? That's my kind of next question to them. And the fact that we continue to meet, in a way, answers one of my goals at all, one of my initial goals at all. And the fact that every time we meet, there's always a time limit, and they always choose to go well beyond the time frame that we met every single time. I say, oh, we got an hour, we'll meet for an hour. They say, okay, yeah, an hour. And then I'll say, oh, it's about time to finish. And they say, oh, let's stay a little bit longer. And every single time it extends much longer. That's also, regardless of the opinions, the fact that we've been able to cross the street and put down any bullhorns and put down signs, put down banners, put down prejudices in order to just see each other as human beings. For me, that was the goal. That was one of the main goals. And that's why Mussar was such an important framework for this. The focus has been, how do we talk to each other? But the fundamental principle of how we see another human being is the basis of this methodology, as it were. Jeff, you unmuted. Did you want to say something?
Yeah, I do. Thank you. Thank you for this so far. I was thinking about Omer being a process on our way to something, on our way to revelation. So it strikes me that more than learning how to talk to each other, it's really learning more how to hear each other.
Yeah.
Because that's the prerequisite for revelation, right? For the receptivity. So are we open enough to hear? And that strikes me as the worthy goal. just hear each other and know the depth of the existential, angst that we all feel.
Yes.
So the speaking is less important than the hearing.
Yes. Yes.
Right.
Yes. It's interesting because one of the things that I have loved doing recently in the last year is studying Mussar through art. And part of the Omer messages I send out on a daily basis right now have been based on different art pieces. And I took a group on a tour of a exhibit at the MFA that's on right now, MFA in Boston, by John Wilson. Have you all ever heard of John Wilson? I never had. I never had. He's an African American artist who's painted in Boston for 25 years. He taught at BU, down the street, for 20 years. He's a very active, very well-known artist in the African American community, and I'd never heard of him. And none of us had ever heard of him. And other white people that I spoke to in Boston who are really big in art had never heard of him. And that was, to me, about B'Tselem Elohim. That was another aspect of, Jeff, what you're saying is hearing. For me, it became about seeing. That down the street, really not far, is a major artist whose works are all over Boston that I'd never seen ever. And his work is all about how we are seen or not seen, as the case may be. So I took Chesed texts and B'Tselem Elohim texts, mainly B'Tselem Elohim texts, and studied those texts through John Wilson's eyes, as it were. And part of the reason why I'm so drawn to John Wilson now is in part because I gave myself and those people we were dialoguing with, I wanted to see them. I wanted to see who they were, who these guys were who spoke on this podium and caused fear among 7-year-olds and 11-year-olds and 50-year-olds. But I wanted to see who they were and see if they could see me and who I am and who those 7-year-olds and 11-year-olds and 50-year-olds are, rather than just a mob of people who hate Israel and hate Jews and a mob of people who don't talk to people who think differently, right? Do you know what I mean? So it's partly hearing, and for me, the metaphor has become seeing.
Yeah.
Jeff, what would you think?
My teacher talks about separating the person from the raw energy, the Yetzer Ra, the raw energy that is being expressed. So here you get to see the person, not the opinion. So I value what you're doing. I appreciate what you're doing.
And part of it, just a commentary on what your teacher's text, I wanted to understand their passion. I wanted to understand what the energy was that brought them on that day, at that moment. What was their passion? What was their existential passion and their Behira point, their choice to do that on that day? I want to unpeel the layers and understand what their existential passion was, their existential energy was. Whether it was for good or for ill, I didn't know. That was how I saw it. The effect was on us was for ill. But was the passion for ill as well? Was the existential energy that led them to that Behira point, was that also raw? I don't know. I don't know. I didn't know. And it's one of the things I wanted to find out. Do you know what I mean? And in fact, I did find out. I got a lot more information about what their existential energy was because of the conversations that we've had that I never, ever would have understood. That has opened my eyes to so much. These two were African American. It is my understanding of their existential passion has now helped me understand so much more about the Black-Jewish partnership that doesn't really exist anymore and why it doesn't exist anymore. I understand it much more now because of that sakranut, because of that curiosity, and because of our conversations. I mean, I'm not going into a lot of detail because that's for another time in a way, but I'm happy to come back and talk with you all in much more detail about the conversations and about what they said and about what I said and where and the changes that they've had, that they've experienced, that they've expressed to me in their existential understanding of the worlds that they and I co-inhabit. They saw them as completely different worlds, and I don't think they do anymore. And I don't anymore. Yeah, Lisa. Sorry.
Without breaking any confidences, because I know you had a rule about that. I was just trying to understand how they felt that platform of MLK on that day, how they represented Martin Luther King by bashing Israel. I was just like, there's so much discord in this country, and there's so much inequality for African Americans and Black people in this country and others in this country. I just wondered how they felt that was the moment for them, that given that Boston is a fairly Jewish community, they must have known that there was going to be a lot of Jewish people there, and why they chose to do that on that day. And having said that, I mean, I participated in many MLK programs over the last 30 years, over 3 decades. And I have to say that since October 7th, I really have not been invited to be part of more of the interfaith programs that I used to be part of. And I think it is because they are othering us. And I'm not, I mean, not that I wouldn't go if they didn't invite me, because I would, but I feel like there's something has shifted there. And I mean, I feel it very strongly, and it's upsetting for me. At the same time, I'm curious. I would love to meet these guys and say, hey, I'm your sister. I've been praying with you guys for 3 decades, and now we can't pray together because of Israel. I don't understand it. I'm not gonna not want to pray with you because of something of a country in Africa, what your home country is, with that your home country made war on a people and did genocide. I'm not gonna hold that against you as a human being. Why would you hold Israel's actions against me as a Jew? That makes no sense to me.
And in a way, that certainly came up. And I did ask them directly. In the very initial, the very first conversation that we had, the very first dialogue session, was one of my questions to them in the free-flowing time was, in effect, what happened to the partnership that we had together? What happened, And they, part of their existential energy was, as one of them said to me, we read Dr. Martin Luther King very differently now, post George Floyd, actually. And with October 7th, they are reading him and reading some of his less well-known texts in a more active way than they used to before. And And part of their existential Behira point was some of those readings. So both some of his texts and some of their readings. So it's something that we've continued together, and it's something that one of the things we have not done that we said we would do, but I can only do so much, actually. I can only fill my plate with so much, was to study those texts with them, was to read those texts together. And they've said that they would love to do it, and the parents would like to do it, and I would like to do it.
I would like to do it. I would like to do it.
Yeah. And it's been a hell of a
You know,
year, so we have not, I have
mean,
put that on the to-do list that I've not picked up yet. But it's a good thing to maybe do as a group with them and with others of their people who are following in their same or feel the same.
Kaya wants to say something,
Yeah.
and then I'm gonna say something else.
So
Yeah.
don't they realize that I was at the museum in Atlanta where they replicated MLK's library, and don't they realize that there are siddurim in that
I know.
and books and texts in that
Yes.
library? They need to
Yes.
know that
Yes.
he had such a close relationship with Rabbi Heschel.
Yes.
So
Yes.
I wanted to put that out.
Yes. Yes. Yeah. They do know that. Yeah. Yeah. Lisa.
Something happened in my community in York after October 7th. I had been involved in some wonderful interfaith Thanksgiving programs that I had led and organized, and they were wonderful. We hired a new rabbi up there, and after October 7th, there was a Muslim woman who lovely lady, by the way. I mean, I just loved her, who refused to, that she didn't want to participate in the program if we were going to be there. Like there was just some stuff that happened. Now, if my rabbi handled it the way you did and said, "Oh, let's have a dialogue. Let's handle it differently. Let's frame this in a different way and come together and talk about it." But she would not hear them. She got very, very angry and said, "Well, if they want to be that way, I'm never coming to this again. I'm disassociating the Jewish community, this group of 10
Oh, I see.
churches." And I felt I was it was a gut punch for me, because I at the time I had been the Colbo, and then I went just to being the lowly cantor. But I felt it was the wrong thing to do. I didn't speak up, because I did write to them and say, "I'm really sorry that we're not doing this event." And it didn't come back again. And then I feel like those events are not coming back again because of her actions,
And to
because
be
of the
honest,
way she reacted.
and I think we've all done that, actually. I think in many ways there have been moments, not all, not we all, but I mean, there have been certainly moments, of course, when we as the Jewish community, or we've hardened our hearts in some ways or another, right? In a variety of ways. Um, by we it, it, it can be very tempting and easy to write off people who say things that are so painful and so horrible. And sometimes it's right to write those people off. Sometimes it is. Sometimes it is like, we can't have a relationship here because of, for whatever reason. But our first instinct, I believe, when that's our first instinct, that's the end. There's to form a bridge when that's our first instinct and we follow that first instinct. I think that's why our society is just really crumbled, and we need to rebuild civil discourse right? Even when we radically disagree. And to be, I be very clear, I radically disagreed with these guys. Almost everything they said in our conversations for the whole year and a half, I have disagreed with what they've said. And this is something that was key. They did buy into the guidelines. They did buy in to believing that we are children of God, that I am as well. They did buy into that. And if they hadn't bought into it, or if they'd said, you're a Jew, or any of those things they could have said and walked away, then surely there's nothing I could have done to have changed that. I can't control their behavior, as we know, from a Mussar point of view. I could only offer the opportunity to say, let's see if we can see this differently. See, not this. Let's see if we can see each other differently. Let's put on different glasses just to try it. So I get what you're saying, Lisa. So shall we, again, I'm really happy there's so much more to this topic of how to do this and how we've done it and the things how they've changed and how I've changed. And I also want to, and again, I can come back and we can dig into this much more deeply. And I also want us to, I promised that we would look at chesed. So I want us to dig into that a little bit, just a little bit, if that's okay. So, and part of the reason for doing, and the reason why I want to bring that to us, why I want us to dig into chesed a little bit more, is through the lens of this dialogue, through the lens of how to use chesed to rebuild civil discourse. We know a lot about chesed. I know those of you that I know, Lisa and Marcia, I know that chesed is so much a part of who you are. And I'm assuming that about Jeff and Chaya as well. And I also assume that you probably know some of these texts, if not all of them. And I knew them too before I started this dialogue with them. And chesed became something different for me through this work with them. And that's the lens through which I want us to see chesed. Okay, so that's the framework. Okay, so I am going to share, I'm going to share a text, a set of texts with you, but I'm also going to put the link in the chat so that you can access it yourself. And I just realized I need to change the access to it. So hold on a second. Okay. So now y'all should be able to access it, but I'm also going to screen share just to make it easy for you, if that's helpful. Okay. And again, same principle, just interrupt whenever. Okay. And I figure we'll do about another half hour, if that works for y'all in terms of timing, just to give us a sense of where we are. Okay, so if you want to reach me, good way to reach me is asoulinbalance@gmail.com. But now you've got that access. And also, if you're interested in the courses or Marcia, if you want to come on one of the art tours with me, I would love to have you. I'd love to have you. That would be so fun to do that with you. Okay, so just, we know the text. Al Shlosha Devarim, Ha'olam Omed, Al HaTorah, Ve'al Ha'avda, Ve'al Gemilu Chasadim. So why, my question to us, why, if we understand chesed, if we understand the world as on a
balanced on 3 legs, which is like a tripod, 3-legged tripod, right? That is pretty unsteady. It's not very much for the world to stand on and or to balance on. And the rabbis chose these 3 from this Pirkei Avot text. I know that there's more, but we're just focusing on the first bit, on Torah, on Avodah, and on Chesed, Gemilut Chesedim, Chesed. Why Chesed? That's a real question. And I'm still examining that question for myself. Why Chesed? Out of all the things that could have been chosen, it could have been in all the things that could have been chosen within Judaism, within Jewish life. It could have been Shabbat. It could have been mitzvot. It could have been, I mean, just why Chesed? That's any thoughts on that from your perspective and your wisdom? Why Chesed?
I
What
think
is so important about it? Yeah, Chaya.
I think that Chesed allows for the heart to be opened. It's like the Deuteronomy, it says circumcised heart. So we open the heart and then we're able to accept anything, Torah, loving kindness, everything that we hold dear. It's like that's why in the Haftarah it says you will love. It's like we put it on the surface and then eventually it kind of seeps down into the heart and into the mind.
I love that. And that is such a great understanding about why Chesed was such an important midah in this dialogue, because that's what we had to do. We had to open our hearts and our souls to another human being. That instead of just opening our minds and our intellect, which often sometimes it can be limiting sometimes, that we had to open our hearts. And that, I think that's a great way to put it. Any other thoughts? Yeah, Jeff.
We sent our kids years ago to the Waldorf school, so we were introduced to Rudolf Steiner and anthroposophy, and there's an understanding of humanity that is threefold: head, heart, and hands.
Yeah.
And that's reflected in, from the sages, right? That,
Yeah.
So I think it's a pretty strong 3-legged table if those 3 things are integrated: head,
Yeah.
heart, hands. Not, it's like the triangle that can't work unless, it has all 3 parts.
Yeah. And
Um,
unless all 3 are aligned,
yeah,
the
right,
same,
and harmonized in some way. Exactly.
yeah, and
Right.
all aligned with the same goal, with the same center, as it were. Yeah, I think that's great. I think that's a
Hey, can I
great.
ask you a question
Yeah,
before I have
please.
to leave, before I
Oh,
have
yeah.
to, but
Sure.
your Mussar training, does it come out of David Jaffe or Alan Marinis or
No,
or
actually, no, it comes out of, I'll just stop screen sharing for a second just to answer that question for you.
quickly,
I said
sorry.
I would tell you about myself, and I actually haven't. So apologize for that. It came out of, did y'all, I was ordained at HUC, and I started in Jerusalem, of course, and then LA. And I don't know if y'all studied in LA, but there was a wonderful Rabbi, Richard Levy. Richard, who edited On Wings of Awe, a beautiful High Holy Day, Machzor, and a wonderful poet. And anyway, yes, yeah, that's Richard too. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Um, so my first year in rabbinic school at HUC in LA, I studied, actually, David Ellenson, Zichrono Livracha, taught me my first Mussar course. But he taught it from a sociological, historical point of view. I learned all about the masters of Mussar and their communities and the yeshivot and just all of that from David. But from Richard, Richard gave me my first Mussar Kabbalah, my first spiritual practice, where he, I was quite a pessimistic person. I was not very optimistic. I always thought everything was going to go wrong every day. And Richard told me to write down to say 100 brachot every day, but I had to write each one down 100 every day, and I couldn't repeat any of them for a month. So I had to write 100 brachot every day in English that each were different. So by the end of the month, I was supposed to have written 3,000 blessings in effect. And so my first day of doing it, I loved Richard. He was a really powerful teacher for me. And so I thought I'm going to do this. So the first day I came out of my apartment in LA and I wrote, "Thank you for the beautiful blue sky. Thank you for my health. Thank you for," what was the other one? "My family." I thought, okay, great. And then I couldn't think of any more. I had a lot more to go, 97 more to go that day. And I looked at a plant on my stoop and it had pink flowers. So thank you for the pink flowers. Thank you for the dark green leaves. Thank you for the pink leaves. And I kind of got the hang of it. And by the end of the month, I was different. I realized that there were blessings all around me and miracles all around me, and I'd missed them all because I was so focused on what would go wrong, so focused on the negative that I missed them completely. And he taught me about Hakarat HaTov. And I continued to study with him. And then I studied with Jonathan Omerman. I don't know if you know who he was. Great, great teacher. And I studied Tomer Devora with him and Adine Steinsaltz with him. And so been studying Mussar since rabbinic school, so over 30 years. I was ordained a long time ago. And then years and years later, I met Alan and started reading some of Ira Stone and stuff like that. But Mussar has really changed who I am in so many ways. And so it started with Richard and Jonathan.
Thank you. I'm glad to hear that. Thanks.
Yeah. So thanks for asking. Sorry, I should have said that originally, given you a taste of that. So I've been teaching and studying Mussar ever since. And my my faith is very strong. My faith in God is very strong. So although I've had definite faith crises over the years, but Mussar and and Shekhinah have been intertwined. But I teach Mussar in a way that enables people not to have faith. If you don't have faith, that's okay too. You don't have to have faith in a higher power, as it were, or something else. You have to have faith in yourself. You have to believe that you have wisdom and that you have something to offer and that you can change. And you have to believe that we can be better. If you've got that, then you're good to go, kind of thing. Good to start learning Mussar. So.
Well, I want to talk about chesed again, or
Yes.
gimilut chasadim from that point of view, because I think the reason why it's so strong and important is because when we perform acts of kindness for other people, we sort of forget about all of our own issues. You know what I mean? the more we do for other people, the less we're focused on the stuff that's happening that is bothering about our own lives. And I found that, I mean, when my brother and sister died, my mother died there within a year, I went to CPE and, started becoming a chaplain. That's what got me out of my depression and my pain and everything. That act of doing things for other people. That's why I think it's one of the three most important tenets of Judaism, because we want to be those who help, we want to be people who help others. And in so doing, we are healing it does open our heart because we heal ourselves. So that's my view.
I think that's very powerful, and I've drawn us to a text, or Yechezkel. I don't know whether you know this. It's a Mussar text that says very much about that. A person who's occupied with taking anything they can for themselves, or one could say is overwhelmed by the grief or overwhelmed with, I'm going to say narrowed in. I don't mean narrow as a Mitzrayim thing. I just mean focused on whatever the loss, like you're saying, the grief or depression, or we do not notice that others are bestowing kindnesses as well, that there is kind of like with my negativity, I didn't realize how much beauty there was in the world because I was so focused on the negative. And he says, when we are able to step outside of ourselves and become an outwardly focused and giving individual, we become aware of the kindnesses that we receive from others. Since we now appreciate that others exist, and this is his text, this will specifically affect our relationship with God, for we will become aware that the Holy One is constantly and consistently showering us with kindness, that the Holy One is there, walking by our side, even though we didn't know it. It is therefore clear that developing an attitude of chesed brings us closer to an awareness of God's existence. It also brings us to, I want to show Rabbi Dessler, powerful Mussar teacher, said, number 3, if you make an effort to help everyone you meet, you will feel close to everyone. A stranger is someone you have not yet helped. I just love that. I love that. And that may be a help, maybe just a smile. And there's a lot of Mussar texts, and I'm sure you've seen this, a lot of chesed texts as well, about just giving a smile. And this is what you were saying, Jeff, in a way, seeing another person, seeing that someone else exists and letting them know that we see that they exist, that is a powerful act of chesed. That is not nothing. That is very serious. In a world where we feel so alone and so isolated and so wondering what our role is in this world, seeing another human being with just even a smile and acknowledging their presence, no matter who they are, is an act of chesed. By doing acts, and back to Dessler, by doing acts of chesed for everyone, you can fill your worlds with friends and loved ones. Then the text, then another commentary on that would be, what is a friend and what is a loved one? But we're not going to get into that for the moment. For Dessler, chesed is about connecting. No, chesed is about seeing another and connecting with them. A text that highlights this, and there's a lot of Mussar commentary on this text, is this one from Exodus, when it said God heard their groaning and God remembered God's covenant with Abraham, Isaac, and with Jacob. Vayar Elohim et bnei Israel vayada Elohim. God saw, God heard, God recognized, God saw what the Bnei Israel were going through, and God understood. That's the key thing, isn't it, with chesed, is we might see, and that's another layer to this, to chesed. We might see that another one is that someone is on the street begging for, with asking for money. We might see that. And we might put coins in. We might go offer them a sandwich. We might sit down and talk with them. It's the sitting down and talking with them that is what these texts are about. It's taking the time to say, I see you. I used to, sorry, I missed that chat. Jeff, were you saying you had to go?
I gotta go because
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
after fun, but thank you. Nice to meet you. I'll be in
Very
touch.
nice to meet you.
Thank you all.
to
Nice to
meet
meet you all.
Thanks, Jeff. Thanks for being here.
Thank you.
Be well.
Yeah, it was lovely. Thank you. Thank you.
Jeff.
We'll just do another 15 minutes just to kind of give a basics for this. I used to, we used to live in London. We lived in London for 25 years, and we spent a lot of time in central London. And there are a lot of beggars in central London, lots and lots and lots. And so we used to give our kids, when they were little, and then they use their own money as they get older, we'd all fill our pockets with coins. And then whenever we would see someone who was in need or was asking for money or whatever, we would stop and say hello and ask them something. The kids had to ask them something. It had to be, how was your day? Or can I get you a sandwich? Or it had to be something and they had to look them in the eye and, as best as they could, see this person, acknowledge their existence, and have some inkling of some awareness of understanding of something about them. And I'll never forget the time when, I don't know, my daughter must have been about 8, and there was a man. Oh, Lisa, are you raising your
Stand
hand?
up.
Oh,
No,
yeah.
I had to stand. I have a standing
Yeah,
desk. I can't sit
yeah.
down anymore. After
No,
an hour, I just
absolutely.
can't. Okay, keep going. This is great.
Finish and she asked him, she gave him money, and she said, what did you do before you lived here? That's what she asked. What did you do before you lived here? And he said, I was an artist. Well, what was amazing is my daughter's an artist. So she was like, I'm an artist too. And then they had this whole conversation about art and about why they both loved art and what kind of art did they do? What kind of painting did he do? What kind of painting did she do? And they had this whole conversation about art and about being an artist. And she's never forgotten it, and I've never forgotten it. And it was like these moments when, if we stop, we all know this, and I'm sure we've all done this as well, when we've stopped and done the chesed that these texts are talking about, it changes us. It changes us, and it connects us in ways that it makes us less isolated too. And it makes us all part of this flow. So now I'm going to come to this. I'm going to move a little bit. And I love this. I love this text. I will, that verse, I will bring honey forth from the rock, that beautiful text. And I love that. I think of honey as chesed, like it drips slowly, little by little. And once it starts to drip, when you lift up honey on a spoon and you're pouring it, it's hard to stop. It's hard to stop honey pouring from the jar or from the spoon. And it's like chesed. Once you get that we need to see, once we get in our hearts that we've made a choice that the stance through which we're going to see everything is through the lens of connecting with another and seeing another using chesed, then it can't stop. It softens everything and it sweetens bitterness. And it's not doesn't have to be a heavy thing. It's light. It just can go in drips. And it's hard to stop. So I love that text. When I start losing my sense of chesed, I think of this text. I think, oh, I have become the rock again. I need to bring forth the honey from whatever has drawn me away from chesed, the rockiness within me that I need to bring the honey forth again. And it's one of my guiding chesed texts. Okay, I want to show you another understanding of chesed that I have, and that is from Nitivat Olam, from the Maharal of Prague. Do you see number 8? And this also is connected to a teaching from the Zohar that I learned from a wonderful Zohar teacher, Malila, through IJS. If some of you, she's in Israel, she's wonderful. And she talked about, I'm going to stop screen sharing for a second because I want to just share this text with you. And I want to tell the story to you really quickly. So Maharal of Prague talks about how basically that chesed is like a river that is always running through us and around us. So it's like in your house, wherever you're sitting, imagine that there is a river, gently, warmly, very low river, running around you right now, around your table, around your chair, around your house. And it is a river of chesed. And all we have to do is remember that it's there. And once we remember that it's there, the other thing we have to do is drink from it. Just as if it's a lovely, clean brook or a lovely, clean glass of water. I don't know. And all we have to do is like reach down and with our hands and just cup a little bit of the water of chesed and take a sip from it. And it's always there for us to take a sip from. And then as we feel it going in, remember that chesed goes to us as well. That when we drink of chesed, of the river that flows around us all the time, we partake and deserve chesed as well. That's a key thing, that chesed, according to Mussar, chesed is not, as we all know, we knew this, you don't need me to tell you this, that chesed is not just an external thing to others, it has to be internally to ourselves. So where did this river of chesed comes from? And this is the Zohar text and the teaching from Malila, that, the 5 rivers, and you may know this Zohar commentary, I didn't, and I learned it from Malila a few years ago, and it's really, anyway, the 5 rivers that were in the Garden of Eden and that say that they were flowing. And the Zohar says that what happened to those rivers, because they kind of disappear, right? Once you leave the garden, what happened to those rivers? Nothing. And she says, the Zohar says that those rivers turned into the rivers of chesed that flow all the time. That those rivers did not stop flowing just because Adam and Eve left the garden. Just because we're not in that garden anymore, the rivers still flow. Our job is to remember that they're there and that they're there for us. they're there for us to drink from, just like they were there for Adam and Eve to drink from. They are there for us to drink from. And that they are there for all of us. That those rivers swirled around these two guys as well. And the chesed was for them, is for them too, not just for me, not just for the people who think that, Israel has the right to exist. And those are the people who get chesed. Do you know what I mean? It's not just for people who voted for the person that I don't think they necessarily should have voted for. It's, sorry, just a second. My daughter, the artist, is trying to get in the house and she doesn't have her key. Pause for a second. I'm going to show chesed to her by opening the door. I'll be right back.
That's great. While she's gone, that image of the water is all around us. I mean, I teach yoga embodiment, so for me, the water is not around me; it's in me. It's flowing through me. The breath is the way that the water flows through. And often I'm talking in my practices about how when we exhale, some things join the flow of the river. So I'm inhaling, I'm taking in chesed through my body, and then when I'm exhaling, I'm putting chesed into the river. Or if I'm inhaling maybe an experience of a chesed from whatever, like let's say this water that's flowing not only around me, but in me. And then when I exhale, I'm letting go anything I don't need, and it's joining the river of chesed. So that becomes even softer because it's not weighing me down anymore. And because it's joining the flow of the river, it's diluted into chesed. It goes back into chesed. So that's how I am seeing that that river, that it's not around me, it's in me. So I'm sure I'll be using that in one of my Mussar yoga practices next month for sure. Chesed Shibagavura is Monday, and I was supposed to practice tomorrow, but I have a funeral, so I won't be doing that. But I am going to bring it forward, and I will use the river, the Chesed River, and the Zohar, and that's really cool. Thank you so much.
That is a very cool way to use that text. It's very cool. And the one of the texts I brought you is at the very end of that document that I gave you is a meditation from Yael Levy. Creating practices that guide us in giving and receiving the divine love, the chesed that flows through and around us and all the world. And she uses this prayer, though, that I'm sure may I, starting with us, may I be blessed with love. May I be blessed with peace. May I be blessed with well-being. May you be blessed with love. May you be blessed with peace. May you be blessed with well-being. And I love that. I think that fits very well with what you just said, Lisa. I brought you there's some other texts around this, but I think we're gonna, well, maybe I'll bring us one more text, and that is this idea that Chaim Luzzatto teaches, this is number 15. Chaim Luzzatto teaches that our precious soul is hidden deep within us. How do we find it? So I think looking for chesed is like a game of hide and seek. We reveal our souls by our actions. Every act of kindness toward ourselves, toward others, helps us see more and more of our souls. Every act of chesed brings us warmer and warmer. Like when you're playing the game of hide and seek, you're warmer to the hidden treasure that is our soul. So the more we give, we drink of that river of chesed, the more we breathe it in, the closer we come to that precious, beautiful soul. So the more connected we are to who we are, and the more connected we are to the gifts that God gave us, and the more connected we are to others around us. So that our goal as I'm going to stop screeching. Our goal as rabbis, our goal as human beings, is to try and help ourselves and others recognize the river of chesed that exists and that God gives us. Yeah. And the dialogue, the goal of the dialogue, for the goal of using chesed as one of the fundamental midot of this dialogue, was so that I would remember that about them and they would learn it about me. And that by connecting to each other through chesed, we would help create, we would add to that river of chesed. And we would all feel more connected and all feel more holy, even though that wasn't their language. It's mine. So I'll stop there for a minute. Thoughts? Any questions or thoughts or your own wisdom to add? Other things you want to add to that, the chesed?
I was taking notes furiously, but I couldn't get it all. So I do hope you'll share your notes with us. And this is very useful. After October 7th, we started a conversation with the interfaith clergy group in this area. And I had just joined it. I said, I know I'm new to this group, but we're talking about Gaza and Israel. Has anybody invited the Muslims? There's a mosque here in Wayland.
Yeah, it's a big one.
And yes. And so they did join us, and conversations were not easy. It was very painful, and we learned so much from each other. So they've continued as a lot of issues with immigration around here. ICE is starting to show up on the streets. So we're banding together around that as well.
Wow.
Learning so much from the Muslims who are coming to our group and talking about the fear and what's going on. So even though we have a split around Gaza and Israel, we have this connection around the fear that a lot of us are feeling of being the outsider of
Right.
might happen with that. So these guidelines are wonderful. Thank you, Marcia. I'm going to be using some of them.
Great, great. I'm going to screen share one last piece of the slide just to show you what the organization that I founded does. So I'm very happy to share with y'all more about the guidelines and the dialogue and what, as I said, what changed, what's more about how we do it week by week, month by month. And I do a lot of I teach these guidelines in the method and facilitate hard conversations as well. And I've adapted the guidelines and the method for kids, and for religion schools and for day schools. And I'm very happy to share with you, if you wanted the daily Omer art, what I'm calling art and soul messages, that's the Mussar through art. And I'm happy to share those, what I've been studying and using through talks and whatever. And we're also, if you know people who are interested in Mussar, we're offering 2 new summer courses if you're interested in that as well. Or if you know people who are interested, let me know. So I'll share this, the slideshow with you as well. So I'll send it to, I guess, Chaya and Lisa, and y'all can send it around as well, if that's helpful
Thank
for
you.
you.
That's wonderful. We appreciate you. Yeah. Or I'll put your email in the newsletter and then they
Yeah.
can contact you. And then we're going to post this on our YouTube channel, so that'll be there
Oh,
as
yeah.
well.
The links will be in the newsletter and on the listserv.
On Ohala, so everybody will be able to
Great.
get it.
Great. Great. Yeah.
Thank you so much. This was
Thanks.
awesome. I
Yeah.
really
Oh, Marcia,
appreciate you.
It's been so great studying with y'all. It's really wonderful to study with wise people. Not that everybody's not wise, but people who already, it's wonderful to study with you who know these texts and already have chesed as part of who you are. So it's great to go even deeper into it with you. So thank you for that.
thank you for being here.
And
Thank you.
Hag Sameach, wherever
Hag
you
Sameach.
Hag- I wish you Hag Sameach. Have a
Thank you.
good weekend as well.
Bye. Be well, everyone.
Bye.
See you
Bye.
soon. Thanks again. Bye-bye.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye. Thank y'all.